I've talked before about the dichotomy of Brandon Braga. In some areas he excels, and in others, he leaves you face-palming. Unlike other staff members who are often usually good, or usually bad, Braga was all over the map. He was like a box of chocolates. You never knew what you were going to get and whether or not it would have salamander sex as the filling. But while Jerry Taylor had been content for a more stagnant Voyager, and once compared it to the Andy Griffith Show for that very reason, Braga was often looking to do new things with the show that would break it out of its rut, such as the Year of Hell, which was turned into the two-parter of Hell. Once he became producer on Voyager after Jerry Taylor moved on, he had a lot of ideas on what he wanted to do. One of them was making better use of Naomi, who appeared in only one episode as more than just a baby. Because as we've established, Naomi is an alien. That's why she grows slow, and also why she grows fast, and that makes perfect sense. Shut up! The first story to make use of her was an idea that Braga had about a child shielded from harsh reality. In this case, Voyager has been pulled into a war, and it wasn't pretty. But we would see this from Naomi's point of view, who is being sheltered by playing in the holodeck the whole time and only given brief glimpses of how screwed Voyager is. Michael Taylor, fresh from his work on Deep Space Nine, which included the amazing The Visitor and next week's review, Things Past, was given this as his first Voyager assignment and turned in his completed script, at which point in stepped Rick Berman, who said there was a serious problem here. There's a war plot going on over on Deep Space Nine, and we can't have a war story in both series at the same time, even if they are nothing alike at all, and they're not even being shown on the same network in a lot of cases. Now, we could move this back 2 weeks to when Deep Space Nine is not doing a war episode, or, and I think we can all agree this is the better plan, we'll keep the deadline in place, but demand that you redo the entire story from scratch. Yes, that sounds like a good plan. I'm going to call Paramount and ask for another raise. I so deserve it. Ron Moore would later single out Michael Taylor as well as Brian Fuller, although I guess that doesn't mean singling since they're two. But anyway, he points out their mistreatment on Voyager was what contributed to him leaving shortly after he arrived, saying it was done solely for the egos of the guys at the top. And I'm betting this instance in particular was one that he had in mind with that. Anyway, this meant that they faced two problems. Not enough time, and not enough time. The first being that there wasn't enough time to think of a replacement for the war. So, in a desperate need to come up with anything, they grudgingly went with yet another shuttle crash episode. Particularly funny since they had just created the Delta Flyer 2 episodes before this because of all the shuttle crashes on the show. The second lack of time meant that Taylor would not have enough time to create the whole thing from scratch by himself, so it was shared out amongst the writing staff simply to get it done in time, resulting in not only a change in the overall story, but a great deal of Taylor's vision for the fairy tale world lost. The end result of this was a story filled with cliches, questionable behavior, and a holodeck story like half-cooked mac and cheese. But hey, at least they didn't have a second war story that week. I think if you have to choose between two episodes with the tiniest glimmer of similarities and just pointlessly screwing one of them over, by all means, destroy a promising idea. That is Voyager's mandate, isn't it? So here we are in the world of Flotter the Water, as Naomi enjoys the scenery and then summons him from his pool. Now, it may surprise you to learn that the actor who plays Flotter, Wallace Langham, had gotten in trouble about 2 months before this episode aired for beating up a gay reporter while allegedly yelling anti-gay slurs at him, for which he would eventually be sentenced to 450 hours of community service for gay and lesbian groups. I want to be very clear that having to appear preening in a skin-tight outfit covered with sequins while emerging from a waterfall in a rainbow-colored land is not the current punishment for anti-gay hate crimes. I'm just saying maybe we should consider it. Well, Flotter has appeared today because he has an important concern: the tree monster. Apparently, this force is a restricted neighborhood,
where counterweights will bend the treetop till it springs back, catapulting him pondward, and splash!
Man, Flutter the Water is like if you asked your mom for Yondu and she said, "No, we've got Yondu at home."
He'll sink like a log.
But Flutter, logs float.
Details.
That is a terrible plan.
Rick Berman puts in a guest appearance. I want you to rewrite that plan from the beginning. The tree monster doesn't believe that Naomi is from outer space.
She does. On a starship called Voyager.
I'm an explorer.
Come on, a children's show about a little girl explorer? Dream on, buddy. Well, it seems the altercation is because the tree monster's tree is drinking up Flotter's water, and they're ready to come to blows over that. Although my money is on the tree over Flotter. He looks like one punch to the gut, and he's going to be on the ground crying and leaking everywhere. But Naomi brokers a peace between the two, proving that even small children are better at it than our captain or ambassador. Naomi's trip is interrupted by a call before bed from her mother, who's on an away mission in the Delta Flyer with Tom and Tuvok. She puts on a brave face, but let's face it, in this situation, she's the one most likely to buy it over two guys in the show's title sequence. And yeah, there was an ion storm, and you never know if that's going to dump you in the mirror universe or what, so care is needed when a second one shows up. Voyager will have to go rescue them, even though there's yet another ion storm on the way. Yep, 3 of them. It's got to be conspiracy. Janeway says, F it, they're going through anyway. We'll just batten down the hatches.
What about Naomi?
Well, we can batten her down too if you think it'll help.
Maybe we shouldn't tell her anything.
I'm sure she'll ask questions while we're battening her down. Janeway finally agrees, since deceiving her crew is often the path of least resistance, so Neelix keeps Naomi busy with a nice full glass of dishwashing liquid.
How is she?
On the Naomi anxiety scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is a touch of insomnia and 10 is a panic attack?
I'm sorry, what was the question again? Meanwhile, the Delta Flyer is trying to outrun that storm for a planetoid where they can wait it out. But under the circumstances, it's a crash landing, which buries them in the relatively soft rock. Samantha Wildman is seriously injured while the other 2 are fine. What a surprise there. But they're trapped under all that rock, which is a bad thing. And worse still is that despite this being an M-class planetoid, the shuttle is surrounded with fluorine gas. Not long after, Voyager arrives to begin the search.
How's our littlest crew member?
And for the last time, I'm not talking about your penis. Neelix will keep Naomi busy with Flotter, while Chakotay will lead the away teams to search for the Delta Flyer. I mean, we just got this thing. We still owe 71 more payments on it. Meanwhile, the doctor's trying to teach botany to Naomi, but she has questions about why her mom hasn't been calling.
Felix, what a pleasure to see you.
You know what? F it. I am dismissing any stupid Neelix moment for this episode simply for that look. Ethan Phillips just looks at the doctor and it screams, "What? No one is ever happy to see me. Even I know that." They discuss the tree monster on their way to the holodeck.
He turned out to be very nice. His bark was worse than his bite.
Where did you learn to make such silly puns?
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.
Once Upon a Time has a bit of personal significance for this show. Longtime SF Debris visitors may recall that way back in the early days of the site, I was assisted in my efforts to brave Voyager from time to time. And it was this very scene where a spontaneous exchange broke out, kicked off by one of my partners, Evil Kniebler.
Who's the furball?
The name's Neelix.
Too bad, I'm going to call you Shithead. Why, I never... No one's talking to you, Shithead. And thus an unintended and admittedly rather unclever nickname was born. But damn it, we've stuck with it. Back to the story. Seems this little brouhaha was caused by the Ogre of Fire.
He is me, and I'm going to burn this forest to the ground.
Wah-hoo-wah-hee-wah-ho-ho-ho. The Ogre of Fire takes out Flotter, and true to his word, the Ogre of Fire burns the place to the ground. Though admittedly, when you're an Ogre of Fire, you don't have a lot of options. To make her feel better, Neelix asks Harry to make a Flotter doll, although Neelix is more worked up than Naomi about what has happened. He seems to want to wrap her up in a world without sharp edges, when what she wants is to solve her problems. While he's trying to pretend that nothing happened to Flotter, she's researching how to make him come back. While he's telling her to play holodeck games, she's talking about wanting to become Captain's assistant. And she's been suspecting more and more that something happened to her mom since she's not calling. But Neelix keeps insisting that everything's just fine. But everything is most definitely not fine.
Coffee, anyone? Captain?
No thanks, I've had enough.
Yeah, it's that bad. That's like Popeye saying, "Spinach? Oh, what's the fucking point?" Janeway figures it might be time to tell Naomi what's going on.
With all due respect, Captain, I'm her godfather. I know what's best for her.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm putting her in a hazmat suit filled with styrofoam peanuts. Good day. Janeway has had enough, though.
If you can't do it, I will.
You don't have the right! You don't understand what's at stake here!
All right. Calm your tits already. The reason he's been acting this way is he associates the loss of his family during the war with Naomi's situation. Basically, he's trying to protect himself by trying to protect her. But Janeway finally convinces him to do it her way, as she always does since she controls all the oxygen on the ship. It's all pointless in the end because Naomi has a bad dream, and when she goes looking for Neelix, she pieces together just how messed up this entire situation is, until she arrives on the bridge to see their rescue effort report coming in. And everything is grim for the moment. But after she runs off, good news, it seems they have located the shuttle, and coincidentally, that seems to be the only place in this entire network of caverns that is flooded with fluorine gas. What are the odds, huh? And this ought to be interesting since fluorine is so reactive that, let me put it this way, if Flaughter was beamed in there, a being composed entirely of water, he would literally catch fire. See, I'm particularly interested in seeing what a phaser drill combined with the pulverized rocket and who knows what else is floating around here hits that gas. That ought to be a sight. Knowing what's probably happening, the trio and the Delta Flyer are saying their goodbyes. Tom, of course, lists the positive of him not being around for B'Elanna anymore, and says those words that reveal his true feelings for her, so long. Some men have trouble saying I love you, and then there's Tom Paris, the man they worship. Back on Voyager, Neelix has been looking for Naomi in the Forest of the Damned.
I wonder if this liar can swim.
We could always hang him from one of my branches.
Let's push him down and make him eat sand. Naomi allows him in, and he fills her in on what's happening and on what happened to his family. He'd lied about that, too, but she seems to have forgiven him. We'll just have to hope the worst is over.
All hands to emergency stations. We've got level 8 ion storm approaching.
What, another one? Why did you come to this godforsaken part of space? And of course, this will collapse the tunnel when it hits because they were only rated to survive 3 collisions with ion storms, not 4.
Keep a transporter lock on the away team. We'll give them to the last second.
Oh yes, beaming up when an ion storm is around. Yeah, that never ends badly, does it? Well, naturally, they're beamed up at the last possible moment. There's a happy reunion with Naomi and Mom, and between Mom and Flaughter for some reason. Because I guess everybody played this as a kid, and I'm not even going to get into that. It's the end. Post-episode follow-up. All scores are relative to their series. Final score for Once Upon a Time is 4 out of 10. Slightly below average for Voyager, but that's to be expected given what had happened. The craziest part is that everyone knows that when you have a show with a child guest star, you are taking a risk, as Rascals had proved rather effectively. You need natural child dialogue and action in the script, and an actor who can perform that convincingly. So the last thing to do is to hamstring yourself needlessly, as was done here. Despite that, Naomi's performance worked. In fact, it was the redeeming point to an otherwise banal episode. And equally surprising is that they managed to do a children's fantasy land that was believable in that capacity without being intolerable. And as a teacher and a parent, I saw a lot of that, and half the time, real shows like this reminded me of one thing.
I'm Rainbow fucking Randolph!
Don't get me wrong, I'm glad we never saw it again, but it certainly wasn't the problem here. I'm not doing this just to be anti-Berman, because I don't need an excuse. But what we get seems to show just how bad that decision was, because there is very little unrelated to Naomi this episode that's worth watching. Which is because it was all thrown together at the last minute and trampled all over the point of the story. In other words, it's what I've come to expect from Voyager.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
I'm afraid.